Wow, so you're using these communist euphemisms.
That's not communism, Hake.
I really
don't
think
have
that
you
you're a communist.
Hey, can you define communism for me?
Lies.
Well, you know
Because
what? I can't stop you there. You got me there.
Yeah, you're dressed up.
You got me there.
You're dressed up as this fake reasonable person.
What? How you doing?
Doing well. I don't know if you heard any of my conversation about Obamacare with earlier in this show. Oh man, I apologize. I totally forgot that you were coming on today.
It's okay. It's okay. I understand. Everybody's forgetting about the war in Ukraine. Even Hake.
Indeed. Do you agree with William and me that Obamacare is kind of communist?
Not really. It's not a communist program to me. It still works with private healthcare companies. It does not concentrate at all on workers owning the means of production. It seems to be mostly focused on trying to supplement a market failure of people not being covered by health insurance in this country, either because they cannot afford it or because it's just they, for whatever reason, they were unable to get health insurance. But I don't know what specifically about Obamacare would be communist.
Oh, okay. William, what were you going to say? What were you going to say on Obamacare?
Good morning, Dylan. Dylan, how you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Good. The part that I kind of look at is that it's kind of top heavy, and it doesn't really help the older people as much. I noticed when it came out, and it helped a lot of younger people that didn't need so much health insurance. I really didn't think about health insurance when I was 22. I probably had it, but didn't really think about it. And I surely wasn't a grown-up at 26. And a lot of those people that had jobs at Walmart during Obama's years, they were working under 37-hour jobs. And when you're 37 hours, what do you think happens after that?
I don't think Obamacare should have been They
have to get Obamacare. Because you know, if you pay 40 hours, Walmart has to pay for those health care plans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, that wasn't necessarily working
so it's like a mandate. You know what I'm saying, Dylan? It's like you mandated into something, and it's not necessarily cheaper either.
Just because something is mandated doesn't necessarily make it communist. You could say that something is, like, for example, you saying something's top heavy, or you could say something's like bureaucratic, or you could.
What does top heavy mean?
Well, I guess I assume when he said top heavy, he meant that it's the government having a top-down approach. If we are ordering you to do this, you're going to do this. Yeah, I assume that's what he meant. But I can understand like somebody coming from
the rich subsidizing the poor, so-called.
That kind of stuff too.
But that's a social program, and social programs aren't necessarily communist because we've just because you social, but there's nothing about a social program that necessarily makes it communist. When Marx was talking about communism, you can say
call it mama in evil.
If you want to call it that, if you want to say like, oh, it's handouts and stuff like that.
Called universal care.
But I feel like we're treating communism, kind of like we're treating it very loosely here. Like everything from Stalin's Soviet Union when he was seizing all of the food and he's, rounding up all of the bourgeois and, putting them on the wall, shooting them, executing them. Like that's communist, everything to a public option or Obamacare is communist. It's just such a wide net that it makes me uncomfortable because we're watering down this word that I think has actual meaning, both to the people who adhere to it and when you're trying to describe historical political movements. And I mean, if this is communist, if this counts as communist, then we'd have to say that any social program would count as semi-communist or communist. And if any social programs counts as communist, semi-communist, or communist, then Social Security is communist.
Yes.
You can make the argument that the police force is communist because that is wealthy people could very easily pay for their own private security on their own properties while not paying for cops to go into lower income neighborhoods to patrol them and try to stop the crime in those communities. My question would then become, what action of the state, if it's related to rich people paying a larger amount to help poor people, wouldn't be considered communist, which would cover a large swath of what the state is meant to do?
Well, I don't know if William from California agrees with me on me calling it all communism. William, William, I want to give you a fair shot at this. You were addressing him, and I jumped in with the communism thing, and I kind of derailed you guys' conversation.
If you want, I could give you my what I want for healthcare currently, or at least this is what I want to pursue right now is a public option, to have a public competing government option with the private options to make them more competitive, make it so they have to compete against that government option. So not only is the government option going to offer not a free option, but a cheap option, an affordable option for working class people, it'll also make the private companies have to compete harder, and we'll have to make them bring down their prices in reaction to a public option being made available to Americans. And I think that's a very moderate healthcare approach. But would that be considered communist because it is technically a social program, even if people still are paying into it, still have to, pay the healthcare services, they're still working with private companies and a capitalist system?
I wouldn't be for it because it's a mess. What do you say, William, though? Because I want to let you get in.
I think that as long as something doesn't affect private insurance, because that's the biggest part I've seen about the Obamacare is the mandation and taxing people and penalizing people for not wanting to be a part of it, and taking the freedom out of the hands of the American people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I understand I understand why people have a problem with the mandate, the idea of the government telling them to get health care.
Just like the mandation of this global warming thing, that a lot of people don't believe in, and that's their freedom to not believe in it.
I would say that there is
of the EV that's not working and that nobody wants. And we were just talking about that the other day about automobiles and taxation on, the junking of these very nasty vehicles. That just mandating anything on the American public. It's just something I don't agree with.
I do agree that mandating it definitely is the top heavy approach as you described, but I would also say that while of course I understand that people are definitely annoyed at the healthcare being mandated, and again, Obamacare is not how I would approach government healthcare. Saying that as a non-expert on government healthcare, but it's not the plan that I would put forward.
I'm always less government. That's just me.
I do want to say that when we're talking about freedom, nobody can really enjoy the freedoms of the United States, whether it comes to freedom of expression, freedom of the press, or any of the things that I appreciate about being in the United States that makes it freer than other countries, our enshrinements of the First Amendment being much stronger. None of these freedoms that I like about America, I wouldn't be able to enjoy them if I'm dead. If I can't afford health insurance, if I feel sick, but I don't have the money to pay for it, so then I don't go to the doctor, and so my disease or whatever issue I has continues to develop. A lot of people die every year, not necessarily even because, they didn't catch it in time or they couldn't afford to go to the doctor, but because they didn't want to spend what little savings they have to go get a checkup when it might end up being nothing. And then they just wasted $300, $400, $500.
It's always been. But you know what, Dylan? Some of these things have already been there. It was called Medicare. It's the same thing.
The problem is, though, even with Medicare, 33,000 Americans, and this is old data. I think the number is actually larger now, but I'm just going on the data that I know is true, which is older, which 33,000 Americans dying every year due to lack of health insurance because they didn't get preventative care. They felt something in their stomach. It's like, oh, that feels bad, but I can't afford it, or I don't want to go spend, I can't take time off of work. Few weeks later, they have cancer, could have dealt with it later, could have dealt with it earlier, could have maybe saved their life. Who knows? A lot of people die every year because of that, and I understand not wanting a program to be mandated, but I do want to. Let me finish my point. I gotta finish my point because this is what I'm building up to.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I can understand somebody not liking the idea of the government telling you have to have health insurance. I, at the end of the day, don't think anybody can enjoy any of the freedoms of the United States if they're caught up by this market failure, which is what I think that a lack of health, people being trapped buy medical companies into continuing to pay these exorbitant fees after they could have gotten preventative care much earlier. I think that's what happens to a lot of working class people. And then they're not able to enjoy financial freedom. They're not able to enjoy their lives. They're stuck in a medical bed, and they might have lost their life when they could have enjoyed their freedom. So I think that even though I understand why you have a problem with it being mandated, at the end of the day, I do think universal coverage is a goal the United States should strive towards to deal with that problem.
I'm going to end it with this. I think the term "you are owed this" is the biggest misconception.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and let everything go on that. And Dylan, it's good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you too. You have a nice one.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, William. Appreciate it. This is Dylan Burns, guys. Dylan Burns TV on YouTube, and I don't know where else you're streaming right now.
Twitch. I stream on Twitch, and then I put the stuff on YouTube. I'm demonetized on YouTube, so don't stream there yet.
Oh, okay. Man, that's still ongoing, huh? What a pain.
For another month.
Okay, hopefully that gets worked out, man. It's Dylan Burns 1776 on Twitter. He also has Dylan Burns TV on Twitter. And I've been on Hippy Dippy Roundtable many times. Mm-hmm. I've been on we've had you on a number of times now talking about the Ukraine mess. I wanted to talk about this communism thing. A lot of what you just described with William from California on the phone earlier about the Obamacare and universal health care and the what you call the market failure is kind of like what I see all of communism, if you will, or maybe I'll just throw out that term since you don't like it, but I call it communism, is to overwhelm the system, break it, say that it's not working, and then revamp it into your image, which is universal so-called healthcare, taking care of everybody and all that stuff. We're seeing that with the border, destroying the meaning of the border, basically, overwhelming the system. We're seeing crime going further and further out of control. We're seeing people's being angry and hateful towards one another, so they're trying to bring in these fake hate crime laws, taking away the freedom of speech. We're seeing the healthcare industry further and further meddled with, overrun with people coming in and taking advantage of the free services. And it's increased irresponsibility, but instead of getting to the root issue, which is being responsible, law and order, containing people, encouraging them to be more moral rather than more immoral and dishonest and cheating the system and all that stuff. Having children, should be having children, not having children, so that we can have, because children used to be that they produced value. They didn't cost so much, but now they're costing because a whole lot of people are not adding value to society. So they're draining society. All of that is giving the excuse to just turn America more into Europe, which is also self-destructing.
When I was in Europe, I gotta say that I didn't really talk to many people who were jealous of our healthcare system. There might be specific people who were talking about like, oh, there's this, healthcare development or scientific development in the United States, or, if you're extraordinarily wealthy, you'll be able to do well in the United States. But I didn't meet many Europeans that were jealous of the American healthcare system. And I was also in a war zone. And when talking to those people who were actively, having their healthcare system strained by the war, healthcare centers bombed, they were still not that jealous of the American healthcare system. We spend a tremendous amount of money for, relatively speaking, not the best care, considering as how many people die every year due to lack of healthcare coverage. You would think if we're spending so much more than other relatively wealthy nations that are comparable to the United States when it comes to GDP, standards of living, and development, that spending all this much more money, being the wealthiest nation in the United States, investing so much in research and development and how much the government puts into the medicine, that we would be striding way past the European powers. We have much more medical developments in the United States and investment into medical research, yet we're not. It's just like with education.
we're blowing all this money in education, and we have the worst education for at least the normal American citizens, young people, ever. But they're trying to make it even worse.
The problem for me, though, is the solution to dealing with those thousands of people who die every year because they didn't go to the doctor's office because they couldn't think they could afford it, or the people who are still left uncovered in many states across the country. I don't think the solution is to just tell them to be responsible and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I do think that we kind of have to create market conditions that allows them to be able to get affordable healthcare options and be covered if we're going to get anywhere close to universal coverage, let alone universal coverage itself, which is probably going to have to come with some broad stroke federal healthcare program, like a public option or some other top-down, top-heavy approach.
But you're ignoring my point that they purposely destroyed the system by overrunning the system with all these immigrants taking advantage of. At what point
was the healthcare system working? At what point did it become broken? Like
I don't know. I know at one point they didn't. There were people who were quite well taken care of, doing quite fine before they did. For example, the forced integration of the communities. A whole lot of people's property values were quite decent. They were making good money.
Was that a good time for American healthcare, do you think?
It might have been because they were subsidized by themselves and the wealth that they created, that rather than having the wealth destroyed by crime and all this overrunning system of people sucking off of the free stuff that we offer. It was people were on the whole more responsible already, so it wasn't overwhelmed as badly as it is today, and it wasn't so dishonest. The government has meddled in the so-called healthcare industry, and these healthcare industries have meddled inside of the government and made things more corrupt and more expensive.
So the reason why I keep calling it a market failure is because, in comparison to
it's a socialist failure.
Well, I'm talking about the problem with American healthcare.
Right. It's socialist.
The reason I call it a market failure is because if I wanted to buy a TV, ultimately I could be like, look, this TV behind me, it's old, it's not great, but it works. I don't want to go have to spend another $300, $400, $500 on this flat screen. It's not necessary. I can make the choice to stay home. I can make the choice to go to other options. I can make the choice to wait and save my money. That's me participating in a free market and making a conscious decision for my financial health as a consumer, right? And so that would be the market working as intended. But if I catch cancer, there is no, well, I'll just wait it out, or, I'll just wait until I have another option. Or, you know what, I'll just get the other cancer treatment that I've got at home. Once you've got cancer and you need it treated, you have to get it treated or you die. There's no, well, I don't want to buy this new car, so I'll take the metro system and I'll just spend on that. And so that's a captive market. And when you have a captive market, they're going to pay you whatever is necessary in order to get the healthcare services necessary to keep them alive, to take care of their children, still see their wife at the end of the week. They're going to do everything they can to survive. And that is where healthcare companies can gouge patients because they know they can't do anything. They have to pay it up. And that right there is a failure of the free market, a market failure where the consumer is at the whim of the healthcare company, which is why I think we need to strengthen the consumer protections around healthcare services in this country, as well as make a public option that's going to treat these people with respect. And that's just the first step, in my opinion. But I think it's a moderate compromise.
But my thing is the government and these companies don't care about the people. The government is part of the problem. They like people having cancer. So they have this problem that they can fund for cancer research for their self-important doctors and researchers. And they like the money being cheaper. Have you noticed
wouldn't the private companies in question, wouldn't they want there not to just throwing this out there, and I'm just gonna be straight up with you. I don't think the government is honestly like yay cancer. I don't think that.
Yes, they are.
I don't think that's the official stance of the government. But
they love it.
If anybody was to be
yay
cancer,
they love people being desperate and sob stories so that they can swoop in and pretend like they're the ones saving you.
If there's any group on the planet that is team cancer, wouldn't it be the healthcare companies that profit off of treating cancer year after year,
doctors.
month after month? But aren't those you said,
and those are the ones who are the most in bed with the government.
When you say most in bed with the government, do you mean they have dealings with the government? Because if the government was to separate more and more, these people would still profit immensely off of cancer treatment, and they have a captive market. They are going to profit off of cancer treatment,
right? And they're encouraging people to do stuff.
How would the private market solve that problem?
Because it's not so much of a problem. They're not encouraging people.
It's not a problem to have a captive market like that and to exploit it.
No, it's not a problem like that, because if they truly cared about the people, they would be not making money so cheap, so worthless. If they cared about the people, they would be closing the border and getting rid of minimum wage and getting rid of all of these regulations that make it hard for people to afford to live and buy homes and own their own stuff, so that they can afford to deal with their life and health. And encourage people to, they encouraged people to stay inside and live a sedentary life during the China virus. People gained like 10, 20 pounds, some of them, and their health was worse off. The government doesn't care about people, nor do the doctors. The doctors tend to be over cautious to the detriment of your health and life.
So I don't know how anybody could say that, people getting the disease or getting cancer, getting this, and then being price gouged by healthcare companies isn't a problem. I do think it's a problem. I do think it's
partly because if
you say it isn't a problem, then under this model, if I was to be like, guys, I got a blood infection from work, I got a rusty nail, it got stuck on my eyeball or something, I need treatment, and the healthcare company was like, great, okay, we'll just need your house.
Right, because we have a socialist system.
Why? How is that socialism?
Because you've made it so that people don't own their own homes. They have to pay rent to the government every year. People would just have enough money to pay the price gouging if we didn't have socialism. People's money isn't even worth anything. They've over-regulated and micromanaged in the health industry so that there's only select number of doctors who can treat you. And they've made it so bad, the doctors don't even believe in what's right anymore. They don't believe in do no harm. The doctors believe in killing the babies and transgendering the people. You believe that these people are honest and for what's right. We have a socialist system that's anti-Christian and anti-common sense and being able to take care of yourself. They've taken away freedoms and powers from people to take care of people. And
I just want to say that the private free market has been very good at aborting many children. Just want to throw that out there. That's not
the private free market. That is
the free market. What do you mean? Many abortions happen under the free market.
Tons of abortions by the government.
Tons of abortions happen under the free market. You think in Argentina they're going to outlaw abortion?
Subsidized by the government.
You think when they go super free ANCAP, they're going to outlaw abortion over there?
I don't know about that. I'm just talking about what the reality is. You're pretending like the government's not involved in that. Involved in
there's a few ways that they're involved. For example, I know that veterans, if they wanted to go to another state right now in order to get reproductive health care services, wanted to get an abortion, that the government will now pay for the transportation due to the fact that many states, they no longer allowed to get abortions there. And as an employer, the federal government has to make sure that everybody can get the same health care services, or there's a discrimination issue.
Isn't that insane? We should get rid of the anti-discrimination laws.
No, that's not. I don't think that's insane. I think it makes sense that an employer.
That's insane, man.
I think it makes sense that an employer would want to make sure that their employees have the same benefits across the board, despite the region. I think that makes sense.
That's not a benefit. How is killing the baby a benefit?
It's health. It's reproductive health care services.
That's not health care.
I mean,
reproductive health care means help you have the baby. Doesn't mean help you kill the baby.
I don't think that's true. I think I've heard many people and many doctors use it in that term.
That's the opposite of reproduction.
Well, I mean, you're using the healthcare professionals to get involved in the reproductive process. That's reproductive healthcare.
That's not healthcare. That's insane. Wow. So you're using these communist euphemisms.
That's not communism.
I really think that you're a communist.
Hey, can you define communism for me?
Lies.
Well, you know what? I can't stop you there. You got me there.
Yeah, you're dressed up.
You got me there.
You're dressed up as this fake reasonable person.
What?
Rationalizing.
I'm a fake reasonable person.
Yeah, like
have you ever met somebody on the coast before? Most people on the coast believe that abortion should be accessible to people.
Yeah, most people are blind, brainwashed, useful idiots for communism. Maybe you're a useful idiot for the communism thing.
I don't think
you're a true believer of this thing as a reproductive health. You are in your early 20s, right? So
I am in my early 20s. Yeah.
I'm not looking down on you or anything, but I think that you're dressed up. It's like Obama was a communist, right?
We have not discussed any of the principles or anything of communism today. We have not discussed anything even remotely related to communism.
Yeah, overwhelm the system, break it down, and rebuild it in the communist image, universal healthcare and all that stuff.
So the communist image is Obamacare working with private healthcare companies who are being paid exorbitant prices for these drugs that they often price gouge. Is the Marxist view of communist healthcare development?
Right. Like you said, you brought up the so-called Social Security. That was that FDR. I think he was
FDR, known Stalinist.
Yeah, he was a communist.
Yeah.
Some people called him a fascist. Some people called him a communist.
Known Nazi sympathizer and Stalinist.
Yeah. Anyway, man, we're at the top of the hour. Speaking of gouging, I gouged you out of the first half hour of the Hake Report.
If you want, look, I can do another half hour if you want.
I appreciate it.
No worries.
Nice. I have a caller who wants to talk with you. Emmanuel in California.
Sure.
You guys can call in 1-888-775-3773. Emmanuel in California, you're live with Dylan Burns TV.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing well.
Doing okay.
I just wanted to comment on the like Medicare, whatever situation, Obamacare.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that like screw the system. Like I grew up not in the hood, but lower income areas. And what they would do is that they would just not marry their wife and get on Medi-Cal, and then they get all the free benefits of food stamp, WIC, Medi-Cal. So they are taking from the system. And like back then, I was paying $500 a month just for my daughter's medical because I was working, unlike the others. And now I'm in a wheelchair. I pay $65 a month, and I get everything for free. Now that I don't have to supply and help pay for the system, it just overburdens it. Someone else still has to pay the bill. That's why there's price gouging. There's not enough people helping pay to keep the system at a steady level. You got too many people stealing from the system. And then, like a lot of these Mexicans too, like I'm Mexican, I know a lot of my family members do this.
Stay close to your phone.
Sorry.
Thanks.
They work here and they ship all their money back to out of California to Mexico.
Yeah.
And then keep all their get all free benefits here for free while they're not even paying taxes to help bring the burden down on the medical system.
You follow that, Dylan? Were you able to hear that?
Yeah, I heard that. Anytime there is a social service that's made widely available to people, definitely try to make it an expansive, universal program to try to address some public issue, whether it be lack of healthcare coverage or really housing, whatever it is. There are going to be instances where that system is abused. I don't know if the system has so much abuse that it's having a significant impact on the ability of the system to service other people. I don't know if it's that expansive. There is fraud, as there is with all social programs, but I don't know how expansive the fraud is when it comes to Social Security, or when it comes to Medicare, or when it comes to these programs specifically. It would have to be talked about on a program by program basis. But I don't know that it's expansive enough that it's having a real impact on the ability for Medicare to cover people. I do want to say on these shows, often the stories that are highlighted are these stories where people abuse the system. But that's because, of course, it's very easy to overlook the stories where the people are helped by the system. I can say that personally, my own mother very much benefited from Obamacare. And when when Trump got elected in 2020, one of the concerns she expressed to me was, well, I think it was 2016, not 2020. When he got elected in 2016 was, I'm very concerned I'm going to lose my healthcare coverage and I'm not going to be able to cover for this. And she didn't have the ability to work. Her body was fucked up to all hell. Her bones were being eaten away and she was not able to go out and do that type of work. And so for every instance where you can describe, a person trying to grift the system, you're going to have 100 instances of people who legitimately need the system's help and was helped by the system. I think a great example of this would be the child tax credit. Were there people who got the money from the child tax credit and didn't spend it on their child, but instead spent it on, I don't know, lines of cocaine or something? I assume so. But 80 to 90% of the money that was spent from the child tax credit went towards mandatory expenses like groceries, child care.
Wait, how do you know that's 80 to 90%?
Because we got those numbers. We got those numbers from the federal government.
Oh, Lord. You trust the federal government to be honest?
I trust the federal government. I trust the federal government. By the way, 80 to 90% though, or good numbers for a program like that. And it shows, but it makes sense. Also, it makes sense because that was during COVID. People were struggling, so it made sense that the government went out, gave people that money to help them pay for their kids, and child poverty was reduced by 30 to 40 to 50% for a brief period in this country.
But that doesn't justify doing it in the wrong way. Like you can help somebody and yes, they are helped, but you're helping them in the wrong way. Most of the time when you have the government getting involved is by mama spirit do-gooders who feel sorry for these people. And there's other ways that they would be taken care of, but there's no faith in God or honesty or fellow human beings and neighbors
what's
anymore.
the other way all these people are going to get taken care of when they get kicked off of Medicare and these different programs?
Because Medicare was wrong to begin with.
Well, no, you said that if these people were all taken off these programs, they'd be covered by other things. Well, I've heard this before
themselves,
but I know that's just themselves. Okay, so
has been wrong
all the
for
disabled
like
people
years.
and all the unbelievably poor people, they're just gonna find ways to cover their health care. So we're not going to see an increase in the amount of people dying every year due to lack of health care coverage. I think we are going to see an increase.
He's swimming in 100 years of communism and women voting.
100 years of man, Hake, have you ever, what communist author or theory or have you ever read anything like what?
Yeah, I read the manifesto about, I don't know if it was the manifesto, but I read the thing about overwhelm the system, keep people off their heels, going outside of their area of expertise.
I think Hillary said that. Yeah.
Divide and conquer through the natural fissures of black and white and men and women and working class and 1% and all that crap. Excuse me, all that crap. But we've had 100 years of women mama spirit voting, looking to the government to be the daddy, the provider, and micromanaging and meddling in people's lives when they should be just minding their own business. And we could be moral and free and the responsibility would win rather than cheating.
The world, though, isn't just everybody living on their lonesome, separate from everybody else.
That's not what I'm presenting, though.
Well,
that is reality. You live on your own regardless.
Well, the problem is, though, the world affects us on a daily basis. For example, Russian invasion of Ukraine has impact on global grain prices. If there is a looting of a local store, that's going to impact your ability to go out and get groceries and feed your family at the end of the week. If there's a strike at a local coal mine, that might affect your energy prices at the end of the week. Whether we like it or not, these things outside of what we can directly control do have an effect in our daily lives. This is true when it comes to the problem.
The government's been the problem, and your solution is more government.
The problem is these issues existed before these issues existed before Social Security. For example, elder poverty, massive issue still, but was an even more massive issue before Social Security was implemented. The implementation of Social Security saw a massive reduction in elder poverty, where elderly people were abandoned by their children, unable to be taken care of, or their kids were too busy taking care of their own families, and so they did their best to make ends meet off of $50 or $100 or $150 a month during the Great Depression. What I said is absolutely true.
No, the Great Depression was a result of the mess with the communist stuff. Manuel in California, last word, go ahead.
You mean what? You mean the markets? You mean the market collapse was the communism?
Go ahead, Manuel in California.
Well, look at this whole social security and all this is like, what makes you think that the government knows what to do with your money better than you do? I would never give my money to the government to pay me back later. That's why I don't pay taxes. I have my own business. I avoid paying taxes at all costs. So I don't have to help pay this communism system that we have. It's a mess.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay for someone else to live. I'll pay for myself to live, and you guys figure it out on your own. You die, you die. You live, you live. Welcome to America.
It makes sense. Back in the olden days, America was tough to live in, and a whole lot of immigrants came here, and it was tough, so they left and went back where it was to live easier lives. Now it's too cushy, and it's causing emergencies later down the road. It's like a shell.
I just want to make sure that this guy don't drive on my roads or my bridges that my tax dollars have been paying for. This freeloader on the phone right now, driving on all those public roads I pay for. I'm not happy about that.
All right, let me tell you some more then. So I make like over $100,000 a year, and I pay like nothing in taxes, and I pay $65 for Medicare since I'm disabled. So, like, you're still going to pay for all my stuff. You see how I'm not helping you at all, but you want that system in here to help who? It's not going to help you. I'm just going to steal money from you this whole time, right?
So you just came on to say that you're a thief and you hate thieves.
How's that
wait, you
thief?
say wait. You said that he just said he's making $100,000 a year while also getting covered by Medicare.
He's stuck in the system that you're defending. So he's just using it the smartest way possible. That's not being a thief.
Wait. He said so. He's trying his best to not pay any taxes as possible, as few taxes to no taxes as possible.
Which is legal.
Well, I'm not. Well, something can be legal, and I can still call it thievery of a sense or speech.
Okay, so you just want to attack him.
Well, what do you mean? If I say, like, I don't want to pay it all into the system, but I want to take the benefits from the system, I am 100% principled. I do look at that with a raised eyebrow.
That's exactly what you're arguing, though.
I'm saying that if he is saying, I'm going to take money out of the system, but pay nothing into the system, and I know that I don't have to take this money out of the system.
He's creating value in the world. If he's making $100,000, but if he's making $100,000 in the world, he's not just a year in the world. If he's making $100,000 a year, he's somebody who's
you don't know. He could be an OnlyFans star. You don't know that.
I know that he's not an OnlyFans star.
He could be an OnlyFans star.
I can't even get naked.
Number one feed account on OnlyFans.
So you agree with me that OnlyFans is a drain on society? It's evil.
I don't know if it's a drain on society or that it's evil.
It's sick. It's bad for both of them.
I'm desperate in a wheelchair, and I won't even marry an OnlyFans woman.
Nice.
No, I would rather be single and dead.
Interesting call, Manuel in California. Last word, real quick.
No, go ahead. I'll get going.
Thank you, man. Go ahead, Dylan. I feel like I'm cutting you off a bit.
Nah, man, I already forgot what we were talking about.
Okay, cool. Let's get to Justin in Fullerton, California. We're having fun here. Justin, you're live with Dylan Burns TV.
Hi, thanks for taking my call, Hake.
Yeah.
I was just wanting to say that when there was a big infamil crisis recently, because of mismanagement, where the taxpayers give their money to the government, what happened? Mothers, had no milk or no formula. So those who did have milk, they shared it within the community. And so time and time again, whether it was a Great Depression or any kind of thing that Americans had to come together with, they did. But as soon as they give up their control to the nanny state, there lies the slavery. I guess if modern day slavery existed, it exists in the notion that not a penny that is paid, you know, for services comes out of your own pocket. It comes out of the government. It doesn't make sense. Like the other caller said, he doesn't even pay taxes. So who's going to pay for everything? You know, if taxes can only go so far to so many people.
Right. We should shrink the government so that it's not so involved in messing up our lives.
So as for the baby formula shortage, the shortage was a real issue. It had to do with the production lines. These companies, they had some production issue. And so that made it so a lot of working class people were unable to afford baby formula or had to make do with substitutes because of these companies failing to keep up the production process and keep it safe and efficient. And so what the government did that we're lambasting right now is imported 1 billion 8-ounce bottle equivalents of formula from abroad to ease the shortage as they fixed the issue before the baby formula shortage went back down and came back under control, relatively under control. So the government that you're criticizing for the baby formula shortage actually helped ease the baby shortage, the baby formula shortage, where the government, where the free market failed.
Yeah, interesting. Well, that's a common pattern that I see within, you know, not only communist countries, but a lot of different types, but for instance, North Korea, they have austerity measures that say, oh, we're limited. We don't have enough toilet paper. You may recall COVID. That's even what caused that shortage issue. It's overall mismanagement.
How did the government cause the baby formula shortage?
Authoritarian control. COVID was to blame for it. If they didn't start the COVID measures where there was supposedly lockdowns in production, just like with oil.
Right.
We don't have enough oil, we have to manufacture it. So I think people have lost the notion.
Yeah, we don't have a free market. He blamed a free market failure, and it's not a free market.
So it was, you guys are just saying, wait. You guys are saying that the shortage was just due to the COVID lockdowns. That's what you guys are saying.
I think wasn't there something where some incompetent, probably foreign people in the factory corrupted the formula? And why
so it doesn't have to do. Wait. So why are we even why are we bringing up authoritarian COVID lockdowns? Why are we bringing that up?
Because we have authoritarian.
It's a totally separate issue. It's not. It has to do with the employees hired by the company corrupting and fucking up. Excuse my French. Messing up the baby formula production process, and then the government comes in, deals with the shortage in the short term to help working class people, and somehow this is the government's fault again.
I disavow the notion of working class people. Go ahead, Justin.
I disavow. I'm going to hang up too. I can't handle this.
You can't. Come on, you're supposed to have patience with the. Oh, he hung up.
Oh well. Us liberals can be frustrating. You got to understand.
Say again.
Us liberals can be quite frustrating. You have to understand.
Yeah, we need to have patience and deal with the lies with perfect patience.
That's true. That's true.
Half truths.
You need to guide me back to the way of light and truth and justice.
Indeed. I have some super chats to read so that we can have you respond to them. Over on DLive, Dijon Paul said, Dylan is the perfect guest to forget. Food Duruti. D-U. Hopefully it's not vulgar.
Is this a reference that I'm not getting?
F-U Duruti. I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Dijon Pot. I think he was saying that when I forgot to bring you on, he said, oh, you're the perfect guest to forget.
Ah, damn.
He's not a fan, I guess.
Damn, not a fan. Not a fan.
Strifecast donated a diamond. Canadians go to the state for cancer treatment, he says. Is that a fact?
I mean, yeah, they have universal state healthcare coverage, yeah.
So they go to the United States?
Well, no, I thought he meant the state as in the government. If he, I mean, some very wealthy Canadians go to the United States to get healthcare coverage.
Yeah. We would be a much wealthier people. I mean, I don't really believe that there's anybody poor in America.
Nobody.
Yeah, but I think that we
wait, can you expand on that? I'm sorry, you can't just drop. I've seen homeless people. Like I
know, but they're not that poor. They're not hungry.
I mean, when you say
Nobody's
they're not
starving? No, have you seen a starving homeless person?
No, but there is an issue with childhood the childhood, like a lack of nutritional options for children and having a real impact on their educational outcomes. Like when we say there's not like an issue of people on the side.
Is that? That's
isn't like
fault.
We're not seeing people with like children with bloated stomachs dying on the side of the road like it's a classic famine. But when it comes to like children having good nutritional outcomes, making sure they're well fed before they go to school so they can fully concentrate on their classes, these are real issues that we still need to deal with when it comes to youth. And homeless people absolutely still have to deal with issues like hunger and homelessness and poverty in a real way.
Right, and they're being subsidized. We should defund the single mothers. I probably said that on your show before.
Probably.
because it's only when you subsidize something, you get more of it. You subsidize homelessness, you get more homelessness. You subsidize single mothers, you get more single mothers. We're subsidizing immorality and irresponsibility.
I don't think that's necessarily true. For example, the child tax credit did see a reduction in childhood poverty. It did see a mass, and that was not even a. By the way, the child tax credit. The child tax credit was like I think a $500 child tax credit. It was, while that's a sizable chunk of change, we're not talking about gigantic $2,000, $3,000 government handouts, and that was enough to have a massive reduction in child poverty. And a lot of people think when it comes to these programs that the program is designed to get people a job or designed in order to get people off of the system into the workforce. And I think that I think a lot of times people want the system to do something it wasn't designed to do. The system was designed in order to lessen the suffering of poverty, make it so that children are not going to sleep at the end of the night hungry, making sure that families have decent heating so they don't freeze during the winter. It's trying to make some of the most brutal realities of poverty less brutal. That was a lot of the purpose behind LBJ's Great Society program. I think that, yay, LBJ, woo. But I don't think that taking a step back, looking at these issues of poverty and the government trying to take a direct approach to them is going to encourage more poverty any more than I think that giving somebody a hand up when they have any medical issue or any other type of issue in their life is going to encourage them to continue to, to have that issue. Can you explain to me the mentality? I would love to hear it.
I know what's going on. You're thinking that poverty is the problem. Poverty is not the problem. The evil spirit that leads to the poverty, the immorality.
I left out the evil spirit when it came to my equation.
Is enabled to continue on, to live longer. Had you had that suffering, then you would, not you, but the general you, the person had that suffering, then that would whip their rear into shape. Shout out to the kids. Kids listen to Hake. And then they would grow rather than live cushy, comfortable slavery lives of communism.
If we have 10 plots of land and 12 trees, then there's going to be a problem there with how many trees get to grow, right? Or how well those trees are going to grow if we don't have enough plots of land for all of the trees. I think that setting the right conditions for people to succeed is very important when it comes to outcomes. In cities where there are lower amounts of crime, in cities where there are better educational resources, better funded public schools, better healthcare options, higher job employment opportunities, and there is just a safer environment, children grow up, unsurprisingly, to have lower participation in crime, higher standard of living, and being more productive in the workforce. I don't think that's particularly surprising.
One doesn't cause the other.
Well, I don't think it necessarily.
You're describing white communities.
One second. I'm not only describing white communities, by the way.
You're describing beautiful white communities that were integrated by force.
I'm just describing positive economic and social indicators. I'm not describing a white community.
You kind of are.
I'm just
Go ahead. Make your point.
God, what was my God?
I messed him up. Be patient with the truth teller.
Yeah. God dang it! You really.
Okay, you were talking about.
Sorry, about
children get better outcomes when they're rich.
Yeah, well, it's not when they're necessarily when they're rich, but when they have a better environment, they are going to have better socioeconomic development. If you have a plant and you try to grow it out in your backyard and you give it good sunlight, good water, all this stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean the plant's going to grow up to be healthy and mighty and strong. Plant might still die. Plant might not go well, but the odds of it succeeding are much higher. And on average, you're probably going to have more success cases than failures. But if you make the environment for these youth, if you make the environment for these families destructive, and you don't make a good environment, and you just leave all of the market failures willy-nilly for people to be caught in them, I think you're going to allow people to fall into a lot of terrible outcomes.
That's because the government is trying to, I get it. The government is trying to artificially create the environment for success without having any root of the underlying roots of good morality and God and fathers and men and manly thinking and hands off. A father is hands off on the situation, and a child gets raised well and thrives like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Whatever you think of him, the son who stayed with him is a strapping young man, whereas the child of the mother micromanages and meddles and spoils like mama spirit, communist government or socialist or whatever you want to call it, Democrat government. If
this was the case, wouldn't that mean that the communities where they have the highest levels of gang violence, highest amounts of crime, less? Why wouldn't West Virginia be like one of the most successful states in the union then? If it's just the government has less interference, stay out of your lives, don't do anything, don't help you, don't interfere. Wouldn't those environments be those states be the most economically productive and not, last place when it comes to economic indicators?
Because money isn't everything, and thriving monetarily. They live
godly lives in West Virginia, that's for sure.
Are you sure? They're living godly lives in West Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of family in West Virginia. I spent a lot of my childhood in West Virginia. I love the state dearly, but it has a lot of horrible economic conditions, from the coal industry degrading, from water pollution, to just decrepit buildings that have been abandoned over time, rotting out in communities across the state.
That doesn't sound very godly.
Well, you can have all those things happening and still be godly. You can be a godly people and still have like water that isn't the greatest. You can be a godly people and have your jobs going away. You can be a godly people.
Well, the water doesn't have to be the greatest, but it's just decent water.
Yeah, drinkable water. Yeah, I believe they deserve drinkable water. But you can have all these unfortunate things come to you, completely separate from your own from your own behavior or actions. The coal industry fell through. The coal industry is not what it used to be. That isn't something that the West Virginians could control. That was something that was completely outside of their control. They found economic failure not because they, strayed away from the light of God, but because international markets looked at their product and said, meh. And now everybody's leaving West Virginia. It's a state that's economically decrepit, and the government there is doing nothing to, I think, adjust in order to try to tackle the issue.
But you're bringing up some outside exception to the rule that may or may not be. You're probably not telling the whole story, which you don't know the whole story, and I can't comment on it because I don't know the details. But I happen to know that the coal industry didn't just fail by the free market. It was by these communists who are pushing this environmentalism stuff. Didn't Obama purposely undermine the coal industry?
Whether or not
too much in a hurry to save the fake environment.
Whether or not the government is encouraging more environmental methods of energy production, solar panels and their costs have been going down for years. Solar panels are becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and it's getting to the point where they're going to be cheaper than other versions of energy production. And they're not the only version that is becoming cheaper too. There's other ways of energy production like fracking and other things that have undercutted nuclear that have undercutted coal. This isn't a thing that's just concentrated in America or America's communist policies. This is a thing that is everywhere. It's global, where all countries are kicking off coal to some degree, unless they kick off the other things like nuclear energy, which Germany had to deal with. But I don't think that it's communist energy production is how West Virginia got to where it is today. But my only point to you is that you can be godly, you can believe in God and have all the moral beliefs that you have right now, Hake, and still get caught in these market failures. And those types of people do deserve to be helped.
Men do. Men take on the challenges and thrive and
well, that's the thing. In many instances where people are trying to do that, for example, being manly, oh, my stomach hurts, I don't need to go to the doctor, I'm going to go work. A few weeks later, stomach cancer.
But that's a fake idea of manliness. You're giving caricatures of manliness because you don't know what it is.
But what I'm talking about is a real thing that happens when it comes to these market failures.
Yeah,
and if we allow the market to operate completely freely, those people are going to continue to die, and it's just going to happen statistically.
All right. I have more super chats, but I have some calls to get to. My favorite caller from the sundown town.
I know we were going to talk about healthcare all day today.
Oh, I know we were going to talk. Okay, yeah, I'll let you get to a couple of other things. Mays in Ohio, speaking of healthcare, you're live with Dylan Burns.
He's talking about West Virginia and the coal mines, those people that go down in the coal mines and have lung cancer and all of that.
Yep.
I mean, like, it's not their fault. It's the industry's fault. But the industry won't take care of them for having to go do all of that. And then all of the places that put out the pollution, those people should be responsible for those people. And then you hear people talking about health care. The charity care is funded by government, too. And if you have
the charity care, you mean like people that are charities, like nonprofits?
Yeah.
They're funded by the government, too?
So if your back go out or something like that happen and you go to them, you are getting government funding too.
Not me. I have. Hey, you have a pipe. You're turning into a man. Dylan Burns is smoking a pipe, the peace pipe. No, I'm kidding. Now, Maze, I have a Christian health share. So my health care is paid for by my fellow man. Yeah. Not the government. I mean, I paid for it and then my those guys reimbursed me. Yeah. I don't know. But they're not government funded, I don't know that much. Yeah. How do you figure, how are you quite sure about that?
Tax write-off.
So you're going to say Samaritan Ministries and some of these other Christian health share organizations are funded by the government without even knowing it? You're just figuring it? Do you know anything about this stuff, Dylan Burns?
Well, I don't know anything about the charity stuff, but when it comes to West Virginia, I do agree with her that a lot of these companies disregarded the health of their employees. Their employees' health was then heavily damaged by working in coal mines for 50 years, which I don't think I need to explain exactly why going underground. And yeah, I know what you're saying, and I generally agree with you. But here's a question to Hake: if a company doesn't take proper care of their employees and puts them to work in extremely dangerous conditions, and they get black lung while they were trying to put food on the table for their families, do you think that the company should be held liable to make sure that they pay for that person's coverage or make sure that they're well taken care of? If you don't want the government to do it, then should the government make the company do it?
It depends on the situation. Like the employees,
like black lung, for example. Guy catches black lung working in the West Virginia coal mines for the coal mine company.
Who knew that was a risk?
Well, I would assume that everybody kind of knows that is a possible risk of employment, just like somebody going into the service knows that getting shot probably is a risk of working in the army.
Yeah. So I don't know.
But we do you think that if somebody dies while working in the army, that the government
is? But I know
black lung is a disease that you get from working underground in the coal mines, from like all the inhalation of all the chemicals and toxins. I mean, you
can't really breathe, and then you kind of suffer for a long time, and then you die.
Basically, yeah.
Can't really function.
Yeah.
In life for a long time.
Yeah, no.
Man, that's terrible.
It's
I don't
awful,
know the answer to that. I mean, I think the
But this is the market failure that I'm talking to you about. It'd be much more profitable for the company in many instances to just say, I don't want to care. I don't care about you. Profit is profit. Get out of my office. I need to go have another like rhino ivory you know, you get what I'm saying.
I think that the employers could stand to be more Christian, perhaps, but there's also this robbery of the community to look out for people in real, actual desperate situations like that.
But we're talking about West Virginia here. There's not a lot. I mean, when we say the community in West Virginia, what do we? Who in what community are they going to be able to? The Mountain Mama people don't have all that money to invest in the infrastructure investments that are necessary. That's going to have to come from, in large part, the federal government.
Whatever.
Can I finish?
Yeah.
In other words, you look at your politician that's making the money, but the people can't get anything, and then they're supposed to be voting in order for them to get good health care. But they don't do that. They got better care than the people that they fight against. And also, James, when it comes to
Wait, what did you say? Say that last part.
They have better health care that they're supposed to be representing.
Who does? I know they should be defunded. We should defund the politicians too.
I think it's a terrible idea.
What terrible idea to defund the politicians?
Well, this is the problem I have, because I remember when I was first getting interested in politics, I was interested in, you know, how legislators live their life, and I worked as a page in the Maryland Senate, and I actually I got my cane swung at me by the Senate President Mike Miller, the longest serving Senate President in the country. So you know, I think I did a good job.
So
but
you've gotten beat up by the
Democratic establishment,
and the politicians.
Yeah.
DC.
But
it's the swamp itself.
But when I was working there, something that really shocked me was how many people were kind of working in state politics, seemingly because they just kind of could. They had the money. They could invest their own money into their work, and they could take the time off of work. They could afford to. Where a lot of working class people, teachers, and people from, and I know you don't like the word working class, but you know what I mean, middle income Americans, right? They find it a lot more difficult because it's hard to take time off of work to get into politics, because you don't make a lot of money as a Maryland legislator. It's like if you're taking a ton of time off of work to make $5,000 to $10,000 a year. I mean, that could be economically devastating for certain families, definitely raising 3-4 kids. So I'm of the belief that if someone becomes a legislator, we should consider paying them a full-time salary to work a full-time's wage. And that means a lot less breaks, but it also means that working class people could more easily participate in politics. And we don't just leave it to the ultra wealthy and the lobbyists.
I think it should be the people who have earned it. If they haven't earned the ability to have that kind of time off, they don't belong imposing. So
they have to be wealthy in order to run for office, is your standard.
Nice.
That's a terrible idea. I mean, but then don't you think if we just have a concentration of all wealthy people controlling the country, that they might just look out for the interests of the wealthy people and not the non-super wealthy people?
That's why we shouldn't be a full-time job where they're busy bodies trying to impose on the rest of our lives. They should limit their powers.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt the caller.
Yeah.
We would have to deal with this, and somebody else getting rid of somebody else's labor.
Huh?
That's not fair. For someone to get rich off someone else's labor, that's not fair.
How so?
They're getting rich, but you're doing the job.
Because they gave you the job.
It's not like
they had the sense to give you the job. You didn't have the sense to make that job yourself.
Yes. Break your chains. Workers' revolution now.
But they want to talk about the coal man. The coal man is going like the cotton. The cotton, when people used to go to the field and pick cotton.
Yeah.
So is the coal man going that way because they didn't have sense enough to make technology for machines to go do the coal, and instead of using humans, so they wouldn't get black lung disease and all of that. That's what happened to the coal man. It's like when you go to make a phone call and you got to speak to somebody in another country, not this one. That's not our fault, and we didn't do it. Somebody did it.
What do you mean?
They're always complaining about what's happening here.
I zoned out and I lost your point. The communists took over the country and we don't know it?
Putin and
No, that's a dictatorship. No, I'm for dictatorships over communism any day, or democracy. Huh?
Huh? What did you say, Hake? Huh?
I said I'm for dictatorships over communism or democracy.
Why?
Yeah.
Wait. Okay. Okay. So in one instance, you're telling me I'm sick of the nanny state. I want the government out of our lives.
Right.
Get the government out of here. And now next statement, it's I would rather a dictatorship than a democracy.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain? Can you correlate those two worldviews for me? Could you explain it for me?
A dictator is usually going to be competent. He has to have some level of competence to be able to dictate.
That's not necessarily true, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, there's exceptions to the rule. Depends on the dictator. Yeah. And then the democracy, most of us are total idiots. Why do you want the rule by the mob?
So I'm gonna take the view of I'm gonna ask some radical authors to guide me here. A guy called Benjamin Franklin and a few other of our founding fathers to give me a little bit of guidance when they were creating this republic. Just because somebody's a dictator and they're competent and competent enough to control the country doesn't necessarily mean that they're competent in the work of statecraft or the work of actually governing the country. I think a great example of this in our modern times would be Bashar al-Assad. This is somebody who originally was an orthodontist who was hoisted to power after his older brother died in a speed fest during the middle of the night as a speedster to both of their father, Hafez al-Assad. When Hafez al-Assad died, Bashar al-Assad took over, and the country has been a mess. He was unable to suppress protests. He brutalized protesters, bombed the country. Country's torn to shit. But he's competent at getting diplomacy enough to get allies to help fight his war, and he's competent enough as a dictator and brutal enough, competent enough in brutality to stay in control. Does that mean he's the best guy for the situation? Best guy for the country just because he's competent enough in that area? He's not competent when it comes to the economy. He's not competent when it comes to healthcare or anti-corruption. His government is the very essence of corruption, but he's competent at holding on to power.
That's Syria. Syria used to be really nice, and I'm not sure if you are giving me or even know the whole truth about what's going on over there. But anyway, you might be right.
Let me ask you a question. When was? I mean, I think Hafez al-Assad was also horrible. When you say Syria was nice, when was nice in what way? Like nice as in peaceful, as in there isn't an active war going on, or nice in the way that, oh, what a great place to live? Because Hafez al-Assad was not the nicest leader.
I just know that I've known some Armenians, and the Armenians liked Syria. It was fine to the Christians, and it was a fine place to live.
Syria is a secular country, and so ostensibly what that means is that religious minorities are not like killed or burnt at the stake or something like that was the idea. But the problem is that Bashar al-Hafez were also, they were both pretty sectarian in favor of the Alawites, but putting that aside, they were also horribly brutal towards their people. For example, Bashar al-Assad in 2004, there was a football match in the north of the country between a Kurdish team and I'm saying Kurdish, but it was like local teams, but the area is Kurdish, so it ends up being a Kurdish team. So I'm just describing it because if I told you a town, you'd be like, I don't know what that means. A Kurdish team, and it was, I believe, a Sunni team or a Sunni Arab team. And they were going against each other in the Sunni Arab team. This was right after Saddam kicked the bucket, held up a picture of Saddam Hussein and was like, yay, yay, yay. Saddam Hussein had gassed and genocided the Kurds. It was meant to piss them off. It'd be like going to a match between, the Israelis
and putting up. Okay, yeah.
You get the idea. And so it pisses off the Kurds, so they start brawling, they fight.
Hold on, Maze. Let me just let him finish, and then you say.
I'm sorry. The story's important because people don't know about pre-Civil War history. They brawl. And eventually it becomes a big protest because the Kurds feel mistreated. And this was like just an example of this mistreatment that they felt in that society. And they ended up tearing down a statue of Hafez al-Assad, who they saw as an oppressor of their people. Bashar al-Assad got very angry because his father had died 4 years earlier. So he sends down tanks, guns, troops, murders a bunch of men, women, children, captures children and women, tortures them in his prisons camps, which has been a staple of his regime ever since, has been the torturing of men, women, and children. In fact, it was the torturing of a child, a 12-year-old child in 2011 that helped start this whole thing off in the first place after his body was dumped on the side of the road after a late night torture session because he put out some anti-government graffiti.
See, we should not encourage anger. We should not have anger because look at all the horrors that come from anger.
That's a takeaway.
But that's an interesting story. Okay, Maze, go ahead. Last point.
The man and the body in one spot, you know nothing.
Yeah. So are you saying that Dylan Burns knows stuff that Hake doesn't know because Dylan Burns is in Ukraine and everywhere else? All
hey,
right.
you teach me something new every show.
Have a good one. You learn something new, but if you're staying in the same spot, you're going to keep the same conversation going.
Nice. Thank you. You too, Mace. Appreciate it. Man, okay. We got 10 minutes. If you're able to hang through here.
Of course, I'll hang through it. I mean, I got an invitation to the Hake Report. I got to be here till the end. It's the Hake Report, for goodness sake.
Indeed. David in Ocala, Florida is on the line with Dylan Burns. David, go.
Hello, Hake and Dylan. Hey, Dylan, I just want to ask you, what do you think about this immigration with this open border and like 12,000, 20, 25-year-old illegals coming into the United States every day?
Was it 25,000? Was that the most recent number?
No, I said 12,000.
Oh yeah.
Who's gonna pay? Who's gonna pay for these people?
Who's gonna pay for these people? Well, that's kind of. Well, that's kind of common. It depends on what
their health care. Who's gonna pay for
probably nobody. I mean, it depends. If you don't have Social Security, then unless you engage in Social Security fraud, which you can't do unless you can do if you break the law, of course, but they would have to engage in Social Security fraud and then in order to take advantage of, I think, healthcare benefits. So they would have to do that first, which
so they're not undocumented, they're fraudulently documented.
Well, the thing is, if you're an undocumented immigrant, and I don't know how, I don't know if you guys have ever engaged in healthcare fraud before. Hey, have you done that before?
No, I didn't have to.
No, okay.
I did the Christian health share thing.
What a square. You haven't even engaged in healthcare fraud. But in order to do that as an undocumented person, you have access to very little benefits. I think SNAP. So I think like when it comes to like childhood nutrition, because they don't want like the child to starve, there's like very, very few health benefits. In order to get most healthcare benefits, you're going to have to engage in Social Security fraud. So it's not like.
What about emergency room?
I think you can get an immediate emergency room treatment, but you're still going to be you're still given the bill. You'd have to skip on the bill in order for somebody else to have to pick that up, which would then fall in the hospital.
If you're undocumented, they can't track you down. You have no identity.
That's why they would have to skip in order not to pay, but they would still be fitted with a bill, just like they would fitted with any of their other bills. Because if you're undocumented in the country, that doesn't mean you probably don't have some sort of an address or some sort of a place that you live or somewhere where you pay some sort of a bill for like electricity, water, heat, stuff like that. But I mean, again, when we say gonna cover them, that assumes that they're all coming over and they're gonna all just immediately go to Social Security office. My only point, let me finish quick. Okay, my only point here is that it's not like they're all jumping the border, immediately getting Social Security guards, and then just going down to the healthcare center and saying, hey, could you give me an abortion? Or like, hey, give me free healthcare. A lot of these people are coming here specifically to get work, so they can make money, so they can then take that money and send it back to their families overseas or start a new life here. A lot of it can't be on one hand, they're coming here to just steal and take all the Social Security programs, all the social programs are going to take all of our money and they're going to steal everything. Well, also, they're going to work so hard and they're going to take my jobs because they work for less money because they're such hard workers. And so are they thieves? Are they hard workers? They're a diverse people. There are all sorts of people coming across the border. And so when we say who's going to pay for these people, in many instances, it's going to be themselves.
No, it's going to be the taxpayers, okay? Because the taxpayers are paying for them right now in those hotels in New York, and I guarantee
That's what that charge
kids,
on my card was. It said Juan, and I didn't know what it meant.
This isn't funny. This isn't funny, man, because there's not enough jobs for these people. There's not enough restaurant jobs. There's not enough, even if they wanted to build houses, there's not enough jobs for these people. And so this is a plan to just water down this country more, to take America out of the deal, you know, to usher in, you know, what do you think about
what makes you,
Would you like that? Would you like that?
A one word, okay. So there's two things. Can I
to the first thing?
Let me respond to the first thing before we talk about globalism.
Because we have to end pretty soon.
Yeah. So as for the first thing, I don't know where you're getting the your unemployment data from, but we have a pretty low unemployment rate at the moment. It's we're at like 2.9% or 2.8%. It's
a joke. You really believe that?
Let him finish.
Hey, this isn't funny. This isn't funny. We can't laugh at this. Don't laugh. Don't laugh at this. This isn't funny. But when it comes to the unemployment data, we do have available jobs. Part of the reason people are coming here is because there are jobs. If there weren't jobs here, they wouldn't be coming here in the first place. But we do have a relatively low unemployment rate, and I do think that we should get the border relatively under control. I think we need to hire more immigration judges. I do think there needs to be some more investment in security at the border. But even if I don't agree with all the Republicans' solutions for the border issue, but at the end of the day, we do have a relatively low unemployment rate.
I think that we need to get rid of the birth control stuff so that we would have babies, so we don't need to rely on these immigrants to come in here and change our culture. Wait.
See, isn't this interesting? On one hand, we don't have a low unemployment rate. We have more than enough workers. But then when we come over to Hake here, in the same perspective, in the same universe, also we need to have more babies because we need more people, because we need more workers. But also they're taking our jobs. We only have so many few jobs. How does that live in the same universe?
There's different issues in different parts of the big country that we're living in, I guess.
Ain't that the truth?
The issue is we need to take care of America first, and the world has been sponging off of us. Okay,
that's not true. Come on. I mean,
that's what. Listen,
how old are you? How old are you, Dylan?
I'm 22.
Okay, well, I'm 58. Okay, and do you realize this country's been in some kind of war, some kind of conflict since World War II every 15 years.
Yeah, but much of that was
another one, which is a big money grab.
What war are we? Wait, we're in a war? What war are we in?
Well, we're sending them money.
Okay, so we're not. So okay, I think it's a little different. American boys living and dying. I think there's a big difference there. But as for a lot of those wars, many of those were for our own interests and were self-interested wars, where we're trying to support our allies for our own trade or economic interests, or to support our own alliances, which is within the national security interest of the United States, for both selfish, immoral reasons and perfectly reasonable reasons. All throughout the last, hundreds of years of the United States. The United States has existed for a long time, so we'd have to go by war and decide which one made sense for America to participate in, which ones didn't. Yugoslavia versus Iraq, for example, like comparing these two different incursions. As for us subsidizing the world, this is a huge misconception in American politics. I really want to take on, and I want to grab by the horns more as a content creator, because if you poll Americans believe we spend on average between 20 to 25% of our federal budget on foreign aid, which is massive numbers. If you believed that
I don't think that's the case, huh?
If you believed anything like that, then your immediate conclusion would be, anytime you ran into any economic trouble as an American or as a country, would be, well, just give us 10% of the stuff we're giving to the Iraqis, or just give me 10% of the stuff we're giving over there. The number is closer to 1%. And it's been like that for a very long time.
Social programs.
And on average,
the social spending is like 60-something% or more. But man, I gotta end. David and Ocala, appreciate your call. real fast.
Okay. Remember, they said Vietnam, they were trying to stop communism, okay? And that was a lie.
I know.
So, you know,
Well, they were trying to stop communism.
59,000 American men died over LBJ and his bull crap in this government.
Whoa.
So one day you'll get a little older and the light bulbs will start going off in your head like they did with me, and you'll start seeing the big picture. Anyway, thanks, Hake, for having me on, and y'all have a great day. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Go ahead, Dylan. Closing remarks.
I mean,
and respond to that if you want.
I mean, he already left. The thing is, I don't like bickering back and forth with someone once they already left, because it's like they're gone. You know, it's like, what do I?
But still make your brief point, because
the Vietnam War was over communism. We didn't trust them because they were communists. In fact, the Vietnamese had a bad relationship with the Chinese for a long time in their history. And there is some reason to believe that Ho Chi Minh, and I think good reason to believe, that he didn't like the Chinese particularly as much because he was a Vietnamese nationalist over anything else. But we weren't willing to work with them because they were communists, and we didn't like the communists very much. But it was over communism. That doesn't mean it was right, but it was like dominated by communism in fear of the domino effect once Vietnam fell and the rest of the area fell. As for me needing to get older, I feel that even though I am quite young, I do have probably a more personal relationship with war. I've seen war probably on a closer level than most people realize or you know, have experienced themselves. That's not true for everybody, but that's true for a lot of people. And you know, I don't know how many more years I'm gonna have to be on this earth for me to have seen like the death pits or many of the awful things that happened there, and that for to change my mind about whether we should be involved or not, or the history of the transatlantic alliance and how important Europe is for export trade, or how important Europe has been for our national security when it comes to being part of a larger alliance that allows us to not be the one just massively spending like double to triple what we would have been militarily on our self-defense spending if we didn't have allies during the Cold War. I mean, I think that it makes sense. But
how do people find you, Dylan Burns? I appreciate it, man. I got to end this thing. I have Joel Friday TV coming up next.
Okay. People can find me at DylanBurnsLIVE or Dylan Burns TV. Those are my two YouTube channels. Dylan Burns Live is where I do my daily stream stuff. Dylan Burns TV is for my journalism stuff. And I wrote an article recently in UPI about the artillery war that I hope people go check out if you guys want to learn more about artillery production and the conditions that Ukrainian artillerymen are facing on the front.
Where do they find that?
At UPI. It's a news outlet.
Okay. Dylan Burns, I appreciate you coming on, man. We'll talk again. Merry Christmas to you and happy Hanukkah or whatever. Everything else.
Merry Christmas.
You're over in Ukraine still, huh?
Nope. I'm back in America.
Oh, sweet.
I'm back in the States until March, and then I head back again.
All right. Well, take care, man. Have a happy new year if I don't see you between now and then.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.